I switch all the way to the other side and I take a look at the youngest effective generation. I call them Generation Omega because I think they are in fact the last human generation, but many people might refer to them as Generation Z. So the kids who are born probably about 1999, 2000, and then up until recently. So they're going to be 18 years or so and younger. When I actually watch them, and particularly when I watch them coordinate in something like Minecraft, I see the stuff that I observed at the Santa Fe Institute happening at a cognitive level, like deliberately. I see it actually happening intrinsically. So there's something about the way that Generation Omega has simply developed. The fact that they've sort of always lived in a world where it was possible and useful to communicate with the people you wanted to communicate with in real time. They're sort of always on, always connected.
Can you give a little bit more of an example of how they're communicating when they're playing that game?
Yeah, so my eldest daughter, who now is, she'll be 15 in a week. When she was in 6th grade, we agreed that she would work on a project of creating something in Minecraft. And so I was thinking very much in a 20th century idea. So I had the notion of a project plan and a series of phases where people would design and then they would create projects and then they would collaborate, that kind of thing, right? A very 20th century post-World War II operational management mindset. But I looked at her, I said, you're agreeing that you're going to create this kind of an object. Here's your design requirements. It's going to have this amount of stuff, and it's going to have at least 7 people contributing, and you're going to get it done by this date. And what I noticed was that within 48 hours, she had already brought 7 people into it. So first, the intuitive muscle of being able to reach out, communicate with, and cohere a group of people was the first. I don't think she even had to spend a moment thinking about it. She was just able to invoke a cohort of people who are willing to come together and play in this space almost instantly. And this was like a 3-month project. They had plenty of time to work on it. So for the better part of 3 months, they just played. They just did things, they collaborated, but they didn't have any structure, no sort of planning around what they were going to do. And as I was just watching this, I was very interested to see how this played out. My expectation was that worst case scenario would be sort of a learning experience and we'd be able to debrief about what worked and what didn't work. So coming down to the last couple of weeks, I said, hey, you're almost to the end of your timeline here. It doesn't seem like you've actually created anything. Do you have a notion of how you're going to go do it? And she just looked at me for a moment and she said, oh, yeah. And so over a period of a week, she just sent out a signal to them, said, hey, can we do this? They all showed up. They had a conversation. And then, honestly, I'm in this point where I can't actually tell you what happened because it's outside of my lived experience. I was just watching something that I don't actually get, but I can tell you what happened. An absolutely astounding level of creativity and this process where, I'm talking about a 6th grade kid, she's sitting at her computer. She has like 7 windows open simultaneously. She's typing in all the different windows. She actually has voice commands. She's talking to different people. And for about 4 hours straight, 4 or 5 days in a row, this was going on. And I was actually watching gigantic structures emerging, people being given or taking responsibility for different kinds of things. Like one person took responsibility for doing programming and creating various kinds of activities in the blocks that could do stuff. Somebody else began just kind of holding and outlining the framework of what the space would look like. Somebody else just decided they were going to be doing narrative and telling a story. And they had some capacity to simultaneously allow every individual to take a particular piece and run with it while maintaining the coherence of the whole, but without any notion of like a top-down leader or any notion of everybody getting together and sort of deliberating on it in consensus. And yet it happened. And so at the end of the period, they created something that was absolutely astounding. I mean, it was physically gorgeous. There's layers and layers of richness. There was multimodal, like it wasn't just architectural. There was also really interesting interactivity. There was storytelling. There was actual different agents, played different pieces in it. And so, when I look at the end, it's not clear to me that I could have figured out anyway. And, I'm somebody who's built complex stuff. I don't know that I could have built anything equivalent to that in the level of the richness and the modality, given a team of extremely competent senior design resources and that amount of time. And they did it all intuitively. So that's another example, right? So you've got like these 3 pieces where you've got folks who are older, beginning to grasp the necessity of operating in this transmedia, transdisciplinary environment and beginning to experiment with what that looks like and how to do it. And then you've got the folks that are younger who, for a variety of different reasons, adaptively have a lot of these skill sets And we can go into great detail of why that's the case. Like, what does it mean to grow up in an environment in the post-Wikipedia environment where the idea of disciplinary expertise and canonical knowledge just doesn't exist at all, and everything is a collaboratively co-created fluid object that everybody has some degree of skepticism about, and everybody has some degree of ownership in the possibility of shaping. Like, the epistemological consequences of being on the other side of that transition are part of what I'm talking about.